The early morning light filtered through the gym's tall glass windows, casting long streaks across the polished floors and mirrored walls. It was 6:05 a.m. and the place was already alive with clanking weights, pounding footsteps on treadmills, and the occasional shout from the personal trainers barking instructions. In the middle of all this energy, a quiet woman stepped through the entrance, barely noticed. She wore a plain gray hoodie, loose black joggers, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was tied back in a practical braid, and she carried a simple gym bag slung over her shoulder. No makeup, no flashy sportswear, no brand sponsorships screaming from her clothing. In this gym filled with sculpted bodies and curated appearances, she looked almost out of place. A pair of fitness influencers by the smoothie bar exchanged a glance when she walked past. One of them whispered, not quietly enough, "Who let the librarian in?" The other laughed. It wasn't the kind of laughter that invited others to join. It was the kind meant to isolate, to belittle. The woman heard it, of course. She always heard it. She just chose not to react. Instead, she scanned the room, quietly making her way to the corner rack where kettlebells were lined up like obedient soldiers. As she stretched in silence, more eyes found her. A young trainer leaned over to a colleague and smirked. Someone's grandma wandered in. The colleague chuckled. Maybe she's here for chair yoga. Still, she said nothing. Her name was Ava, and no one in that gym knew that the woman they were mocking had once spent years training elite special forces operatives in remote terrains across continents, that she had taught soldiers how to survive with a broken leg, how to remain calm under ambush, how to push past pain thresholds most civilians could not imagine. But here, in this room of polished egos and preening postures, none of that mattered. Not yet. To them, Ava was just quiet, plain, unimpressive. But the storm was coming, and it was wearing gray. Ava moved through her warm-up with a calm rhythm that came from years of discipline. Every motion was purposeful, nothing exaggerated, nothing wasted. She started with a series of bodyweight squats and slow shoulder rotations, her eyes scanning the gym floor but not lingering on anyone. Yet everyone's eyes were starting to linger on her. Not because she was doing anything flashy, but because she wasn't. She wasn't filming herself. She wasn't chatting with trainers. She wasn't watching others. She was simply focused. That focus irritated some of the regulars, especially the loud trio near the squat racks, 2 men and 1 woman who liked to call themselves the Iron Crew. Known for their noisy workouts and louder egos, they dominated that part of the gym every morning like it was their private kingdom. One of them, Tyson, a bulky man in his late 20s with sleeves of tattoos and a constant smirk, glanced over at Ava as she passed. "Hey, Grandma," he called out, just loud enough for others to hear. "You lost on your way to the senior center?" Laughter rippled through the nearby crowd. Ava didn't flinch. She didn't slow down either. She simply walked past them and chose a space near the functional area. Ropes, medicine balls, agility ladders. A spot few used at that hour. The woman from the Iron Crew, Marla, rolled her eyes. Watch, she's probably going to do TikTok yoga or some breathing thing. Ava unzipped her bag and quietly took out a jump rope. Tyson whistled. Old school. Haven't seen one of those since high school gym class. They all laughed again. Louder this time. But then she began, and everything started to change. Ava's rope whipped the air with a steady rhythm, faster than anyone in the gym had seen. Double unders, crisscross, side swings. Her feet barely touched the floor. It was like watching a machine. No hesitation, no fumbles. After a minute, even the mocking paused. Marla blinked. Okay, she's got some cardio. Tyson scoffed, unwilling to concede. Big deal. It's just jumping rope. Then Ava stopped, took a breath, and pulled out resistance bands and a 60-pound sandbag from her bag. Without asking for space or assistance, she set up a circuit. Explosive squats with the sandbag, controlled push-ups with a resistance band, quick side shuffles across the agility ladder. And suddenly, everyone who had laughed was now just watching. Even the trainers had turned, because Ava wasn't just fit. She was operating on a completely different level. Her form was perfect. Her transitions were seamless. She wasn't showing off, but every move screamed experience. Still, she said nothing. No eye contact, no revenge smirks. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But the gym, already stunned, had no idea that she hadn't even started yet. Veva moved from the sandbag circuit to the pull-up bar, her hands chalked from her own small pouch rather than the communal bin. She pulled herself up with calm control, chin above the bar, legs still, body aligned like a textbook diagram. 1, 2, 3. No swinging, no kipping, just raw strength and control. At 12, she paused, hung for a breath, and shifted into L-sits. Holding her legs out straight at a 90-degree angle, she continued her pull-ups without even changing expression. By the time she dropped down, a small circle had unconsciously formed around her. No one said a word, they just observed, like they were watching something they did not fully understand. Marla crossed her arms, masking her confusion with a tight-lipped expression. Tyson stared, his jaw shifted. Ava toweled her forehead and reached for a kettlebell, one of the heaviest ones on the rack. She cradled it in one arm, then pressed it overhead in a Turkish get-up, slowly rising from her back to a full standing position with perfect technique. Then she did it again, and again, 3 on each side. A nearby trainer finally spoke to his colleague in a whisper. "That's SF-level conditioning. You don't see that in civvy gyms." The other nodded. "She moves like she's trained combat athletes." It was the first time someone had guessed close to the truth. As Ava continued, 2 gym influencers who had been live streaming their workouts quietly turned their phones off. They had been doing flashy squats with chains and clapping push-ups, but now their routines felt like toddler gymnastics compared to what they were witnessing. Marla broke the silence with a strained laugh. "Okay, so she's fit. Doesn't mean she's not weird." But her voice lacked conviction. Then Ava did something no one expected. She walked calmly toward the squat racks, the Iron Crew's territory. She didn't ask for a turn. She didn't wait to be invited. She simply loaded 2 plates on either side of the bar, 225 pounds. Tyson chuckled. She's gonna snap her spine. But she didn't. Instead, she dropped into a full-depth squat, smooth and stable, and powered back up like it was a warm-up. Then again, and again. 5 clean reps, no spotter, no ego, just strength. A hush fell over the gym. The manager, who had watched from the front desk, leaned to the receptionist. "Pull her file. I want to know who she is." Back at the rack, Ava gently re-racked the weight, stripped the bar, and wiped it down with a towel from her bag. Still no words, still no drama, just a silent challenge in every rep. And for the first time, Tyson didn't have a comeback. He just stood there, watching his own reflection, suddenly less sure of the person staring back. The silence following Ava's quiet display lingered like a cloud that no one dared to clear. Even the clatter of dropped weights seemed muffled in the thick air of realization. Tyson busied himself with adjusting his wrist wraps, something he normally never bothered with. Marla had taken to scrolling aimlessly on her phone, though she wasn't reading anything. She just needed something to anchor herself, something that wasn't Ava. Ava, on the other hand, moved to the rowing machine. She sat down with the same deliberate grace she used for every exercise, focused, precise, and absolutely indifferent to the eyes now glued to her. She set the damper to the highest setting and began rowing, not with the sprinting explosiveness of those trying to impress, but with the measured power of someone trained to conserve energy across miles, not meters. Her strokes were long, even, and mechanical in the most efficient way. Time ticked by. 5 minutes. It was during that row that the gym's assistant manager approached her with a clipboard, the type used only when someone important walked through the door. He spoke quietly, but not so quietly that others couldn't overhear. "Hi, I just wanted to say, your membership file is incomplete. There's a section marked military affiliation, but it's blank. Should we update it?" Ava looked at him and smiled politely. "No need. I'm just here to train." He nodded awkwardly and stepped back, as if he'd just poked something with a stick and realized it might bite. But the whispers had begun. Small ones at first. "I heard she trained overseas." "No, she was definitely military." "Special forces, maybe? Did you see her breathing during that squat set?" The theories flew. None confirmed, and Ava wasn't about to offer clarity. She wasn't here to explain herself. That was the entire point. Then, in a move no one expected, the gym's head trainer walked over with a clipboard of his own. This time he wasn't nervous. He was curious. "Miss, would you consider leading a small advanced conditioning class? Invitation only. I think there's a lot we could learn from your methods." Ava set the handle down on the rowing machine, wiped her brow and met his eyes. "I'm not here to teach," she said. "I'm here to improve, like everyone else." And that landed harder than any lecture, because the people who had spent the last hour sizing her up were now realizing they had completely misunderstood the assignment. Ava wasn't here for attention. She wasn't chasing validation or social capital. She wasn't interested in showing off. She was training. And that, more than anything, made her untouchable. Marla leaned into Tyson and muttered, "She's not even trying. That's what makes it worse." Tyson didn't answer. His gaze was locked on Ava as she began a new circuit, pull-ups, pistol squats, then one-arm push-ups. Each movement spoke a different language than what they were used to. Hers wasn't the language of selfies and sets for show. Hers was the old dialect of grit. And in that moment, it became painfully clear. Ava didn't just belong here. She was operating on a level they hadn't even known existed. As Ava wrapped up her final circuit, a light sheen of sweat on her brow, the energy in the gym had fully shifted. It was not the same space she had walked into earlier that morning. The noise had dimmed, not because the music was lower, but because people were listening differently now, watching her with a kind of quiet reverence they hadn't shown anyone before. She hadn't spoken more than a few words all morning, but somehow, she had said everything. The trainers who once dismissed her were now whispering among themselves with wide eyes and hesitant nods. One was already checking the schedule to see when she came in, as if planning to accidentally be there at the same time. Another, even the influencers, once so bold in their comments, now stood awkwardly by the mirror, their tripods folded, trying not to make eye contact. It was clear now. They had mistaken quiet for weakness, modesty for mediocrity, and their mistake had been put on public display. Marla broke first. She walked up to Ava slowly, her expression a mess of regret and disbelief. "Hey," she started, voice softer than anyone had heard from her before. "I just wanted to say, earlier, I shouldn't have." Ava looked at her, not with anger or even satisfaction, but with an unreadable calm. Marla stopped mid-sentence. "It's fine," Ava said. "You didn't know." That landed heavier than any insult could have, because Ava wasn't offering pity. She was simply speaking the truth. They hadn't known, and now they did. Tyson approached next, slower than Marla. His cocky smirk had vanished. He rubbed the back of his neck and muttered, You train professionally or something?" Ava gave a half-smile. "Something like that." He nodded. "You're really good." Ava simply nodded back, then turned to gather her things. Her pace hadn't changed. Still calm, still quiet. As she walked toward the exit, the gym seemed to part like water around her. People moved instinctively, some out of respect, others out of a newfound understanding. She wasn't just someone who surprised them. She had redefined the entire atmosphere. Without ever needing to prove anything, she had done exactly that. By the time she reached the door, the manager was already typing up a new internal memo. "Be respectful. You never know who's standing in front of you." And Ava? She just stepped back into the morning sun, leaving the gym behind like a quiet storm that had swept through and rewritten the rules. No victory speech, no dramatic farewell, just the silence of someone who had always known who she was. Now, they did too. Ava's day did not end at the gym. After walking out into the fresh morning air, she took a quiet stroll down the block, letting her breath steady and her heart return to its usual calm rhythm. She did not need validation, but there was a strange peace in knowing that a space that once mocked her now held a new kind of silence, one filled with realization rather than ridicule. She arrived at a modest building tucked between two larger complexes, its exterior plain but well kept. Inside was a private training center, far from the public eye, with no influencers, no mirrors, and no judgment. The space smelled of leather gloves and determination. A large matte black mat stretched across the floor, and several people in athletic gear nodded respectfully as she walked in. These were not people who asked where she was from. "You never are. That's what makes it work," Dana said, tossing her a towel. "Ready for the next phase?" Ava nodded. "Always." They trained for the next 2 hours, silent, intense, purposeful. Not for social media, not for applause, for something deeper, something real. Ava was preparing for an upcoming deployment, not in war, but in resilience. She was one of the lead instructors for a classified defense initiative focused on training elite forces in endurance, survival, and situational psychology. The kind of training that never saw headlines but shaped entire missions. Later that evening, after her second training session and a quiet dinner alone, Ava received a message on her secure channel. The agency had reviewed her latest training protocols. They were officially adopting them across all 5 allied units. Her quiet techniques, once questioned even by her own team, were now becoming standard practice. As she read the message, Ava smiled, not out of pride, but out of quiet satisfaction. In a world that rewarded noise and showmanship, she had moved forward with grace, purpose, and discipline. And now, her impact rippled outward in ways that could never be seen from the outside. Meanwhile, back at the gym, the staff added a new quote to the whiteboard wall near the front desk. No one signed it, but everyone knew where it came from. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're usually the ones training you don't even know exist. Ava never saw it. She didn't need to. Her story wasn't written in chalk or posted online. It was written in the strength of her silence, in the discipline of her work, and in the lives she changed without needing to explain herself. She didn't walk into the world demanding attention. She walked into it prepared. And that made all the difference.